Okay, now let's try to implement new topics within S3. I mean, we'll still be using S3, but we have different different properties of S3 that we can use. So let's jump into it. Let's go to AWS. I have the slides. S3. So, okay, next topic that we are going to cover in S3 is security and encryption. Okay. Let me share the screen. Okay, so this is our topic, security and encryption inside S3. So let's get started. Basically, whenever we create a bucket inside S3, we see the default setup is private. I mean, whatever we push or upload anything inside the bucket, it becomes private. Everything is private, even the bucket is private. You can't make the objects inside publicly accessible by anyone using the public URL. So by default, AWS SAA already provides the security by making your bucket private and its content private. We can also use bucket policies and access control list to make the objects kept inside the bucket secure by providing limited permissions to those objects that we upload inside S3. S3 buckets can be configured to create access logs, which log all requests made to the S3 bucket. This can be sent to another bucket and even another bucket in another account. We can also set logs configuration. I mean, who is accessing our S3 bucket, what objects they are accessing, what is the IP address they're using to access our objects kept inside the S3 buckets. So the logs is mainly used for monitoring purposes. Like we in our daily life, we use CCTV security cameras to monitor who is coming inside the house, who's going outside the house. So it's something like that. So it's also a part of security, right? So similarly, logs can also be used as a purpose of security so that you can log them, log those traffic, log those, information that who uploaded the file, which IP was used to upload the file, which IP was used to download the file, when it happened, which file is deleted by which user, blah, blah, blah. So all these things can be, logged inside the log. I mean, you can, monitor all these things and keep it inside as a log. And you can keep these log files inside the same S3 bucket, or you can also keep these log files to a different S3 bucket, or you can even, store those logs into a different bucket of a different AWS accounts. So all these things is a part of security. Now let's move on and talk about encryption on S3. In encryption on S3, there are two types of encryption: encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Encryption, first we have to understand by the word.
You muted for us.
Hello?
Oh, I'm sorry. It was, I don't know, maybe a button was clicked on my keyboard. I was keep on telling. So where was I? I just started this slide, encryption, right? So
Yes.
in S3, we have got two types of encryptions: encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Encryption in transit means while the data is traveling. Well, the encryption itself is a word which means the data which cannot be read. That means it's not human readable or it's not computer readable data. We call it encrypted data, where a plain text is converted into ciphertext or ciphertext. That is called encrypted information, or the process of making those files in ciphertext or ciphertext is called as encryption. So encrypting your data means you are protecting it so that no one can easily read it except you and the authorized person who are allowed to read. And that encryption is possible in two ways, whether the data is traveling or if the data is kept inside the S3 storage. So while the data is traveling, it's like we are talking about uploading your data to S3, and when we are out downloading the data from the S3 bucket to our computer. In these two scenarios, the data is traveling between the computer and the server. So even the data is traveling, we can make that data encrypted while traveling. And we can use this achievement by using the achievement, or by using the service called SSL and TLS. This technology we use to encrypt the data while traveling. So SSL and TLS uses public key, private key cryptography to encrypt your data while it is traveling from your computer to the server, or from server to the computer. And let me show you this in more detailed example. When we visit a normal website, let me share my browser to explain about that encryption. So let's say when we visit this google.com, these kind of huge websites, they use encryption technique in transit. That is SSL, they use SSL and TLS technique. So when the server, they have SSL certificate installed, and when we visit the website, those web servers install those public key into our computer, which if whatever we type over here, that information gets encrypted first in the web browser and then sent it over to the web server. And the web server, when they receive it, the web server has a private key to decrypt that data and read it what the user has typed. And then based on that information, Google provides us the search result. And Google also uses the same key to encrypt it and send it us to our web browser, and web browser decrypts it by having that key. So all these things goes this way, and this only happens because of the SSL. And that is why when we visit those kind of website, that is a proof. When you see this lock icon, that means that the communication between our computer's web browser and the server itself is encrypted. This is the proof whenever you see this lock icon. That doesn't mean the website is secure. That means the communication, when the data is traveling between our web browser and the server, that data is encrypted. This is the meaning of this lock icon over here. You should not understand that the website is 100% secure. This is a different security. This security tells you the communication is encrypted between your web browser and the web server. That's all it means, okay? And if you want to see the key that server provides us to our web browser, you can always check here. You just click on this connection is secure, and then click on certificate is valid, and then you will have these details. When you click on details, you might have the key somewhere here. Here's the key. There's a key ID. Yeah, this is the key. So these are the different keys for log, for encryption, for decryption. Here it is. This is the exact key, fingerprints. SHA, secure hashing algorithm, 256-bit of encryption key that is installed by the Google web server to our web browser. So whenever we make any communication with the Google web server, this key will be used to encrypt your data and then send it over to the internet. And if anyone tries to steal your data while it is traveling, he will not be able to read that data. Why? Because the key for decrypting that data always lies with Google server itself. So the data will only be decrypted if it reaches to the Google web server. So if someone steals that data in the middle, they cannot decrypt it because they don't have the key to decrypt. Always Google keeps that key. Okay, so this is how communication works. The encrypted communication works. Similarly, if you talk about S3, let's just visit the Amazon console. Let me show you how S3 works. What kind of encryption key S3 uses. Let's log in. Let's jump to S3. So this is my bucket. This is the S3, and this is how I upload the files by clicking on this upload button and then adding the files and then finally upload. So when we visit this page, you have that URL, which also has the lock key. That means when we are uploading the data inside S3 or downloading the data from S3, in both of the conditions, this encryption technique is used. So when I visited this S3 server or AWS server has installed the public key inside my web browser to make the communication encrypted. So in order to see this, let's see how secure it is. Click on connection is secure, click on certificate is valid, and click on the details and scroll down. Yes, same kind of security we can find. So these are the different keys used for logs. This is the public key. So they also provide a public key installed in our web browser. So common name, this is the key name. I mean key for this particular site, AP South 1. So basically, this happens when we visit these kind of websites. They install a secure key in our web browser to make the communication encrypted between the server and the web browser itself. Okay. Okay, so this is it. They all have 256-bit of encryption key installed in our web browser. So this way we make our communication secure while the data is traveling. Let's go back to the slide again. So now you understood the first part, that there are two types of encryptions, encryption in transit and encryption at rest. So first part is encryption in transit. That means when the data is, while the data is traveling, the data is encrypted. And remember, if we are visiting a website which does not have any lock symbol, that means I'm talking about the website which only uses HTTP. That doesn't use HTTPS. So the websites which uses only HTTP does not use any kind of encryption. So the communication between the web browser and this web server which uses the HTTP is not encrypted. It is on plain text. So anyone can steal. If they can intercept the traffic, they can read what's the communication going on between the user and the server. Even the user is typing username and password, the man in the middle attack or the person who's doing it can easily see those passwords and usernames while traveling. And that is why we use encryption in transit. Now, second is encryption at rest. Now, encryption at rest is again of two types: server-side encryption and client-side encryption. Under server-side encryption, which means the server itself, like S3 would itself or Amazon itself, would provide the encryption service. That is called server-side encryption. That means when you are storing your data inside Amazon S3, while keeping the data inside S3 or while storing the data inside S3, the data would be encrypted. As long as the data stays inside S3, that would be encrypted using server-side encryption. It's all up to us. If I would like to encrypt it, we can, or if we want to keep it in a plain text, we can do that too. So Amazon provides those services for you. If you want to make your data encrypted while keeping inside S3, you can do that using these services. So remember, there are two types of encryption at rest. There is server-side encryption. There is client-side encryption. Server-side encryption is provided by AWS. So there are three server-side encryption techniques are there. There is S3 managed keys. We call it SAA-C SAA stands for server-side encryption, S3. So here, S3 itself will encrypt and decrypt your data while you keep it, while you keep the data inside S3. Then there is second technique, AWS key management service, where AWS itself will manage the keys for encryption and decryption. I told you, we said we have different keys for encryption. We have a different key for decryption. It's like you have one lock with multiple keys. One key is used to lock that, and another key is used to unlock it. This makes that encryption more secure. So similarly, if you are sending someone with a secret message by locking that box, you put that message in that box and you lock it with the key. Now assume if you use the same key to lock it and unlock it. So if someone is taking that box with him and sending it over to the person who is going to receive it, and the other person who attacked him in the way when it is traveling, then he can take that lock and the key both and then unlock it and read the message. But what if you have the lock with a lock key and which has unlock key, and the receiver has only that key which he can use to unlock, and the sender who is sending the box, he has only the key which he used to lock. That's all. So if he put the message in the box and then lock it using the lock key, and the person who is traveling and taking that particular message of the box with the box to the destination receiver, and if that person who is traveling, he is attacked by someone else, then the person who is attacking, he will not be able to open that box even he steals that key with that person, because that key is only used to lock. This is called public key private key cryptography, and this is what we use inside this encryption technique here. So AWS key management service will manage those keys to lock and unlock the data when you are keeping it inside. And this is called, in short, SAC KMS, server-side encryption. SAC stands for server-side encryption, and KMS stands for key management service. S3 we know is a simple storage service, and SAC again here, SAC S3 means server-side encryption provided by S3. Then there is server-side encryption using key management service provided by AWS. Then there is another third option for the encryption. It says server-side encryption with customer provided keys. That means we as a customer or the user who is using the AWS account, we as a user will provide the key to lock and unlock our data when we are storing it inside the AWS S3. So even we don't trust those keys to be more secure, we can create our own key and provide that key to Amazon so that it can, encrypt and decrypt. Now, you still don't trust on AWS. Maybe AWS will, keep your data encrypted, but they have the key since you are managing those keys in AWS. So you can, think that maybe AWS can steal or something like that. Then in that case, Amazon says, if you don't trust us, use the client-side encryption technique. Client-side encryption technique is technique where customers itself, like we as a user itself, will encrypt the data before uploading to the S3. Like we will encrypt our data inside our computer, and we as a user can use any kind of encryption technique, any kind of tool to encrypt that data. No one else, knows about it. So even AWS doesn't know about it, what encryption technique you have used. So what we will do is that we will encrypt the data ourselves first in our computer, and then we will upload it to the Amazon S3 bucket, so that even Amazon would not know what kind of encryption is used on this particular data that is uploaded to the bucket. So that service is called client-side. That option is called as client-side encryption. So you can keep your data encrypted inside S3 using your own encryption technique that you have applied in your local computer, and then you have uploaded to the bucket. So these are the encryption techniques that we can use. So remember, there are two types of encryption: encryption in transit and encryption at rest. Encryption in transit, requires SSL and TLS technology to encrypt your data while it is traveling. And encryption at rest requires server-side encryption and client-side encryption. And in server-side encryption, we have three different types of encryption. That is SAA-C03. That is server-side encryption by S3. There is AWS Key Management Service, and there is also customer-provided key that we, as a customer, provide the key to encrypt the data. And the last is client-side encryption, where the client or customers will encrypt the data first in the local computer, and then will upload to the Amazon S3. So this is all about security and encryption in Amazon S3. Now let's see how we can implement these encryptions inside S3. Let me take you to the dashboard, and I will show you how we can do that. So you can see I already have several buckets in my AWS account, and among them I have these buckets here. Let's choose any bucket. And for example, we can apply encryption based on, either on entire bucket, or we can also, apply encryption on an individual object as well. So for the entire bucket, you just go inside the bucket, like I'm inside the bucket. This is my bucket name, Afzal 2021. This is the bucket name. That means I'm inside the bucket. And I will go here in the properties. And inside this properties, if I scroll down, you will find default encryption. So remember, this is my bucket. I am inside encryption option. So whatever the encryption that I will apply here, that encryption will be applied to the entire bucket, and whatever the contents are there inside the bucket, the all contents will be affected by that encryption. So to do that, you just click on this edit button to the right side in front of the default encryption. You can see the default encryption by default, it is disabled. That means there is no encryption applied. So whatever the data that we're keeping inside the bucket is in plain text. Anyone can read it. Now, if you want to apply encryption, you just click on this edit button over here and then click on enable. When you click on enable, it will ask you what kind of encryption technique you would like to use. I already showed you the encryption in transit. I already showed you while explaining about the encryption. I already showed you that S3 uses public key, private key cryptography, SSL and TLS, because it installs the public key inside our browser. I showed you that one. Now we are discussing about server-side encryption. So in server-side encryption, when we click on enable, it shows me two options. I showed you that there are three different, server-side encryption techniques are there: SAA-C03, SAA-C and SAA-C. That means server-side encryption, customer-provided key. So I'm going to show you all these three options. So the first option is SAA-C03. That means if I select this and then I click on Save Changes, server-side encryption will be enabled, and that would be SAA-C03. That means server-side encryption managed by S3 itself. Now, if I click edit back again, and if I choose the another option, that is KMS technique. So under KMS, you will find two more options. So this one here, it says either you as a user can provide the key. For example, Like I'm a user, that means I'm a customer, and I want to provide, as a customer, I want to provide the key to lock and unlock the data or encrypt the data inside S3. That is called SAA-C, that is server-side encryption, customer provided key, the third option. You can use this option here. And for that, if I select this one here, it will ask me to choose the key if you have. I don't have any keys created. That means the key should be created by me. That would be called as customer provided key. So if I do not have the key already created, I can go and create the key. But remember, creating the key needs algorithm skills. You need to have algorithm expert. You need to have different encryption algorithm expert. So you would be having knowledge about symmetric algorithm, asymmetric keys, encrypt and decrypt options, and several options you should be well aware of about it. If you know these things, you can create the key, and then you can use these keys. Once the keys are created, you can go back and choose from the list, and you will use your own key to encrypt the data. Now this option here on top uses AWS KMS. That is AWS S3. So key will be managed by the AWS itself. That is called key management service. So this option allows AWS KMS technique, and this option allows the customers to provide their own key. So this way we have explored all three options of server-side encryption. So in the server-side encryption, we have SAA-C03, we have AWS KMS, and we also have customer provided key, the third. And this is how we use it. For AWS KMS, it's super easy because here we do not have to create the key. We just select this option and then click on Save Changes. That's all. But this encryption is applied to the entire bucket's content. Whatever the content is there, they all will follow the encryption technique. And if you want to disable it, you click Edit again. You just go and then select the disable option, server-side encryption, disable, and then save changes. So this is how we recover it back to the normal. Now for object-based, if you want to encrypt the individual object, you need to jump into the objects list and you can select the particular object which you would like to encrypt. For example, I want to encrypt this image.jpg file. If I click here and try to open this file, excuse me, I cannot see because it's access denied. Let's just first make it public. What could be the reason that I am not able to make this file publicly accessible? Edmund, you are muted.
Because it's encrypted.
No. Edmund, you have the mic button. Can you see there's a mic button in red color?
Yeah, I've got it.
Okay. Now you are unmuted.
Yeah.
It says it's failed to edit public access. Encryption is not blocking it because I have not encrypted anything. I have disabled the encryption. You can see there is no encryption applied on this object, neither any encryption applied on the entire bucket. Do you remember the last session, how we make the object publicly accessible?
Yeah.
We have to jump into the bucket section and then go to permission. What we have to do over here? Do you remember we have to make this block all public access off? If I click on edit, it is actually blocking all the public access, which needs to be disabled. This is actually blocking our, this is actually not allowing our objects to be publicly accessible. So if you remember in the last session, I did this part. So I have to uncheck it and then save changes and then confirm. Now let's try to make this object publicly accessible. You see, it is publicly accessible. Let's try to access it. A very small picture, but yeah, we are able to access it. Let's try to make it private. I mean, let's try to make it encrypted. So I'm inside the object. I have selected the object that I want to encrypt, okay? And I'm already inside the property of this object. You see here, it is disabled. Let's try to enable it. So this is server-side encryption settings, which is disabled. Let's enable it. Here we also have that SAA-C03 and AWS KMS technique. So I'm going to use AWS KMS. So AWS KMS is there. It's selected. Now I'm going to apply the changes. Let's click on close. Now you can see I'm not able to see the file. Why? This time the request here, you see the response is different. It says request as specifying server-side encryption with AWS KMS managed keys require AWS signature verification, version 4. So I am not able to read the file because the data is encrypted using AWS KMS. Now you see it. I have made this file encrypted and I'm not able to see this, even if I have the public access enabled, even I have the ability to see the file using its public URL. I'm not able to read the file because we have implemented AWS KMS technique to encrypt that data. Now let's unencrypt it and see if we are able to see the file again. So this is the server-side encryption settings. Let's click on edit and disable it. Now I have made the file, unencrypted. Now let's go and check the file if it is accessible using the same URL, and it should be accessible because we have removed the encryption. Let's try this. Now you can see the file is unencrypted and we can see the file. Okay, so this is how we use the encryption technique to encrypt our data on S3 while storing it. And I showed you almost all the options to encrypt your data while the data is traveling, while the data is kept. And we use the server-side encryption, SSE S3. We use the server-side encryption using KMS. We use the server. I showed you how we can use server-side encryption using customer-provided key. Let's move to the different topic. Okay, our next topic is versioning. You can keep multiple versions of the same file. Let's try this. I'm going to create a text file and I'm going to name it versioning. Let's try this. Okay, and I'm going to name it this. So RTF rich text document, where is the .txt? ODT, docx, XML, doc, HTML. I don't only HTML. Okay, I'm saving it as an HTML file. So assume it's a text file and the file name is versioning, and we have the content. It says this is version 1, and I'm going to save it to my desktop. If I click on save, I should have it somewhere here on the desktop. Versioning. Here it is. So this is the file that I have just created, and this has the content. This is version 1, and I'm going to upload it to the bucket. So let's open. Okay. I open my bucket here. I'm in S3, and let's click on the bucket that where I have to upload the file. And I'm going to upload a file in this bucket, and I'm going to, upload it using the upload button, and then click on add file. And it should list me all the files on desktop. I have to pick version. Select here and open. You can see the size is 527 bytes. It's a text or HTML. It's an HTML file definitely. And then click on upload. 527 bytes. Upload succeeded. Let's click on close. And we know that this is a new file. So of course, this file is not accessible right now. If I click open it and right click and open it in a new tab using the public URL, I will not be able to see it access DNAT because it's a new file. So every new file is private. So first, let's make this file publicly accessible. Make public, then make public, and done. It is publicly accessible now. Now let's close it and let's try to access it again into a new tab. And you can see it says this is version 1. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to edit the same file. I'm not going to change this file. I'm not going to rename it, or I'm not going to, I want the file to be as is. And I will just edit the inside content of this file. So let's make it 2. This is version 2. Now let's try a new file, new line. This is latest version, something like that. And I saved it by pressing Command S. Now I'm going to upload the same file again. Normally what happens is that, the older file gets replaced. And you can see here, if I open my bucket and if I click on the bucket, so I have this particular bucket here. And if I click on the properties, there is versioning option is given. Okay, it's already enabled. I'm sorry. It's already enabled. By default, usually the versioning is disabled in the new buckets. For example, if I have this file here, for example, this bucket, Pratik, if I click on properties, oh, this also has enabled. Let's go somewhere else, PNM pre-sign. And if I click here, properties, okay, this bucket here, it is disabled. And I supposed to upload the file in PNM pre-sign then, because all your buckets that you have in your AWS account, all the buckets by default does not have versioning enabled. And these all are most of them, in all of them, I should say, are my older buckets. And I have experimented something related to versioning. That's why I have most of the buckets versioning enabled. But let me tell you this, default setting, by default, S3 does not have versioning enabled on any of your buckets that you newly create, unless you manually enable it. It's all up to you. So it's like this bucket here, PNM pre-sign. It doesn't have versioning enabled right now. Okay. And you can also see the objects that I will upload here cannot be public, but that's okay. Let's assume the bucket has versioning disabled. Let's click on suspend and I acknowledge, and then I save changes. It has replication also enabled. Give me a moment, please. Okay, so it should looks like this. It should look like this, that this is by default disabled. Okay, and I have uploaded files here, versioning.html, and if I want to see it, I can see this has version 1. It says this is version 1. Now what I'm gonna do is that I'm gonna upload the same file called version.html. The same file I'm gonna upload again, but this has a different content. But normally what happens, we have seen that if we try to copy something with the same name to the destination where the same thing is already there, let's say versioning.html is already there, and I'm gonna upload a new file called versioning.html, which has the same name again. I'm trying to upload this same file over here again, then the older file get replaced. This is normally happens. And it will happen when I do it right now. Okay, it will remove this file and update with the new file that I will be uploading. So the previous file will be deleted and new file will appear. This normally happens even in our computer. It will ask you to either replace it or create a file with a different name. So I want to keep with the same name, and I want to keep all those files. So using versioning, if you click on properties and go for versioning and enable it, the older file will not get replaced. So let's click on enable and then save changes. This way you can keep multiple files with the same name as well. With the same name, you can have multiple files, but only the things that make each of the files different from each other is their version ID. Okay, let me show you. Right now we have this older file called versioning.html. It is of 527 bytes. Now I'm going to upload another file with the same name but has a different content, like I just updated you. I mentioned over there, this is version 2, this is latest version. So let's try this. Let's try to upload and see what happens if the older file gets replaced or not after enabling the versioning option. Because I have enabled the versioning option and I want to confirm whether it is replaced the older file. And you see this file has 571. So if I click on open, you see this, the file size is 571. So initial file was 527 bytes, and the new file that I'm uploading with the same name has a size of 571 because we have added an extra line inside that file. So this makes the file a little bigger than the previous. Now let's go and upload this file and then close it. Now you see the versioning.html is still there and it is 571, assuming maybe you will be thinking that it has replaced the older file that we had before of 527 bytes and replaced with the new file, right? But this is not the case. There is a show version option given, right? If I click on this show version, you can see this versioning.html has two files here. This and each of the files has version ID. Both of them has a version ID. Both of them has the same name and both of them has a unique version ID. No version ID matches with any one of these files. So, and if you try to look at the file size, you see the older version has 527 bytes and the new version has 571 bytes. This is the difference. So when you upload, when you enable the versioning and keep on uploading same file name at the same location, you will be having multiple versions of the same file. And each file will have a unique version ID. Now you might also see that some of the files, let's say this one here, wp-config.php, it has a version ID null. Almost all of them has version ID, but this file has a version ID null. Why? Because this file, wp-config.php, was created when versioning was disabled. At that time, this file was uploaded. So if any file you will upload inside the bucket, when the versioning was not enabled, then you will have a null version ID. Remember this point, This can be asked in the exam, and it has already been asked in the exam several times. So when you have a null, version ID, that means the file that we have uploaded inside the bucket was uploaded at the time when versioning was disabled. That is why we got null. And when the versioning is enabled and you upload any file after enabling the versioning, then each file will have a unique version ID. It doesn't matter if the file is uploaded only one time or multiple times, it doesn't matter. Every single file will have a version ID if they're uploaded after enabling the versioning. And that is why we have two different versions of the same file you can see here. And let's try to see the latest file. Let's go to the properties. Let's go back to the objects and, switch off the show versions option. And we know this is a new file that we have just uploaded. Now, my question is to you. I have already enabled the public access of the file, but I have uploaded another file with the same name. What do you think? The public access is still there or it has become private? I want your answer. Last time we uploaded the file, we made the file publicly accessible using this URL. We checked the file was accessible. Now I'm asking you again that I have uploaded the same file with the same name, but has a different content inside. So what do you think? Does this file has a still public accessibility or not?
Not. No.
Yes, you're right, because this is a new file. It doesn't matter, it has the same name, but it's definitely a new file because Amazon has already detected it as a new file. And every new file that we upload inside S3 is private by default. So if I try this, I will land by visiting access deny error because the file is new and it is private. Now, in order to see the file, I have to make this file publicly accessible again. So let's go to the option and in object actions and then click on make public and then click again to the make public and close this. And we got the URL again. Let's try to access it again. And this time we are able to see the content. And this content has the updated information that we have updated in the text editor. This is version 2 and this is latest version. Now, this is also private. Now let's go and see how we can access the older. For example, the company says, okay, I want the older version of the file. I don't want this one. Can you just provide me? You have to download it. So the best way is you just click on show versions, okay? And then select that older version that your company demands, and then click on download, and the file will be downloaded. Or if they're asking you to provide the public URL to visit, or if they are asking you to provide this URL of this object to publicly access it. So just, click show versions and then click on the older version of the file, and it will show you the public URL of that file. That's it. And when you visit it, you can see your older file. This is version 1. This was our older file, right? So this is how we can do it. And close this now. Now, there are many other options. You see, I visited this object, I click on the versions, and I can have the versions as well, unique, having both, unique version IDs. So this is our latest version of the same file, and this is the older version of the same file. We are in the versioning.html. So we are visiting versioning.html file, and this versioning.html has two different versions. This was being the older version, and this one is being the latest version. Now, one more thing I would like to show you. If I go back and let's try to delete this file. Let's go here and select the versioning.html. Let's click on delete and then type here delete. And then click on delete objects. And you see the file is gone. Versioning.html is gone. But actually, it's not gone. If you click on show versions, you can still see versioning.html files are still there. If you want to see them, you just click on there and then visit the URL, and you can see the files are still there. It is the latest one, and we also have the older one as well. Now, what happened when I deleted? If I click on show versions, it shows me that when I deleted the file, it has actually created another version of the same file, and that version is called as delete marker. It is not actually a file, it's actually a marker that this one gets created when I deleted the file from the bucket. So that means we still have all those files there stored. That means I can still recover these files. How we can recover these files? Either you just select those files and download them, just select individually and download them one by one. You just visit them. Or one more thing, if you want to get it back normally, for example, if I just click on unshow, you see you can't find the versioning.html. But if I click on show versions, it shows me. So if I want this thing go back, you want this thing back on the main screen, you just select this delete marker and then delete this delete marker. And type here, permanently delete. Because this is a delete marker. And when I deleted the files, this delete marker appears. So if I delete the delete marker, we will be able to see those files back again. And if I click on unshow this time, you see versioning.html is back because we have deleted the delete marker. Now you may ask me, what if the company actually wants to permanently delete it? Because whenever we delete it, it creates a delete marker and the files are still there, which is actually causing the money, which is actually costing the money, and it is actually occupying our space, which we are renting. So company definitely want, for example, if companies show that we do not need it anymore, and we have decided to permanently delete it, we do not want to be there, because if you keep this, or if it is still there in a different version, you are actually causing money. This is actually acquiring your more space. So if you decide, if your company decided to permanently delete that, then how we can do that? To permanently delete the file, what you have to do is click on show versions, okay, and then select the individual versions. For example, I want to delete them all. So I select those both versions of the file and then click on delete. When I click on delete, it will ask you to type here permanently delete. So if I type here permanently delete and then delete, the files will be gone permanently. So if I click on close, I can't see those files. Even the show versions are open. I can't see those versioning.html files. And even if I unshow, there is no chance of, getting those files back. So I can say the versioning is a good tool for backup. It can also help you to retrieve the older version of the file in case you needed the older versions. And in case if someone accidentally deletes your file, you can recover it using show version option. But if you have decided, you are confirmed that you want to delete it permanently, then you need to click on show versions and then select the individual object and delete it from there permanently. So this is the versioning thing. And let me go back to the slide. Versioning. So this is what we have learned so far. It stores all version of your own object inside your bucket, including writes, and even if you delete an object. That means even if we delete the file, it creates a delete marker and creates a different version for that delete marker as well. So this is versioning, and it's a kind of great backup tool. So if someone accidentally deleted, you can recover that. Once the versioning is enabled, you cannot disable it. You can only suspend it. And that's true. Even if you go back to your AWS console, I can show you that. We are back in the console here. And if I go to, I'm already inside the bucket. If I go to properties of this bucket, and there we see the bucket versioning is enabled. So if I want to disable it, I just click on edit. You see there is no disable option given. It only has suspend option. So once enabled, you need to remember, once the versioning is enabled, you cannot disable it. You can only suspend it on the bucket. So I want to suspend it. So no future versioning will be created. No future version of the files will be created if you upload a new files. So I click on, I acknowledge it, and then save changes. And this is how the versioning is disabled. Now, if you upload a file with the same name again, your file, older file, will be replaced with the newer file, and you will not have a different version of the same file. Now let's go back to the slide again and integrates with lifecycle rule. I will show you how it can work with the lifecycle rule. There is a different topic coming next in the next session about lifecycle management in S3, which we'll be covering up tomorrow at 9 a.m. Central. Sorry, 9 a.m. Eastern. Okay, so that I will show you that how we can use lifecycle management, and I will show you over there that it integrates with versioning as well. So you can find versioning option in lifecycle management rule. Now, versioning also has MFA delete capability, which you can use for a multi-factor authentication delete. That means even if you have to delete the files, then you have to provide the 6-digit MFA code to delete the file, which will actually protect your data from the accidental delete. Next, yeah. So this is the same thing that I just recalled. I showed you the practical. It showed stores all version of your file. It's a kind of great backup tool. Once the versioning is enabled, it cannot be disabled, and it integrates with lifecycle root, and it also has MFA delete capability. So keep this thing in mind about versioning. I showed you the practical behavior, so you should understand well. Any questions? Okay, looks no questions. Okay, then see you tomorrow, 9 a.m. Eastern time. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. See you tomorrow. Bye, and have a nice day.